Good evening and welcome to Sunday Night Live. Hello,
Hi there.
Rabbi Eisenberg. How are you?
All right, very well. How are you? You're in a different place tonight.
I am in a different place now. Well spotted. Apparently, I'm too loud for the kids. It disturbs them going to sleep. Whereas I've had a lot of people write into us and say that the only thing that sends them to sleep is Sunday Night Live. So, you can't please people.
Look, if you can put everybody else to sleep, I've been doing that for years. It's a great job.
I bet it is. Job satisfaction. Right, our guest is patiently waiting in the wings, so we're going to bring him in. Just bear with us a second. I'm not going to ask him to introduce himself, but he will. I'm going to give him a brief introduction himself. He will be a very familiar face to everybody around Shul, Mr. Aaron Lowe, married to the wonderful Gemma, who was on our show a few weeks ago with Michael and made
everybody cry.
Everybody cry. So no pressure, Aaron.
If you can no pressure at all.
Right, we'll be happy.
I will do my best not to make the rabbi cry because I saw little tears going down.
They're going down there.
Aaron, obviously as I understand it, you have in your day job you work with the Friendship Circle.
Yeah.
And you also have a sort of a side business, if you like, and that's tutoring boys who are going through the bar mitzvah process as well. So the reason I'm stating that in the introduction is the obvious, that you have a job that involves communicating with people on a daily basis. And I think when the rabbi contacted me to say that you've got a story, and it was that you had suffered with stuttering or stammering when you were younger and you'd overcome it, my first reaction was, well, I had absolutely no idea whatsoever, because in the interactions that we've had in and around shul and supermarkets where we bump into each other on Erev Shabbos, there's been very little sign of that whatsoever. So for those of us that don't know your kind of backstory with it, maybe you can describe your experiences.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm going to go back quite a long way. It's probably around the age of 7 or 8. And I don't remember this massively, but I guess that my parents picked up that I had a stammer which is slightly different to a stutter. It's a great word, stammer, stutter. It's a terrible word for a stammerer or a stutterer to say. Especially stutter. Oh, nasty word. But so I think that my understanding is that the difference is that a stammer is where you'll sort of repeat the letters or the words, and a stutter is where you sort of almost choke on the word or you can't get the words out. That's my sort of understanding of the sort of difference between the two. But going back, my sort of story, about 7 or 8, I think, and my parents arranged for me to go to speech therapy due to a stammer. And I saw a chap, and I honestly can't remember how many times that I saw him. I must have seen him several times, and then I always had a stammer growing up, even into my teens, but it was something that didn't really have any sort of psychological effect on me. I didn't really think about it too much. I was able to go to shul. I was a member of the Shrubberies Youth Minyan. I was a regular since the age of 12. After I was 13, I was regularly every week laning, davening from the Bimmer, the Omud. I was the youth minyan, the youth minyan gabbai. Guz are terrible, really, really hard to say. Guz, the gabbai. There you go. So I was doing that. So all of these things, I was fairly confident with it, or very, very confident with it. Absolutely fine.
So was your stammer sort of like gone at the time, or what happened to it, or did the therapy help?
It was pretty much gone. I mean, the truth is that it must have helped at that time. It was something that I didn't really think about so much. It was just something that might have been there a bit or been there a lot, maybe, but definitely through my teenage years, up until towards the ends, I'd say until about the age of 19 or even 18, it didn't affect me that much. I was able to carry on with all the daily sorts of stuff, speaking, telephone calls, and all that. And where it all went sort of quite horribly wrong was when, I must have been about 18, and I'd been in yeshiva for almost a year. I'd come home at Pesach time, and I went to my father's shul. I got called up. Now, I mean, during yeshiva, I used to get called up the whole time, being a Levi, so you're getting at least once a week or once every 2 weeks minimum. Davening from the Omid again, laning, all of that. So I came home, I got called up in shul. My dad was the gabbai at the time. I got called up and I couldn't say the words. I just couldn't get the words out. And I can't describe what was going through my head at that time. I mean, it might have been going on for 10 seconds that I got stuck. It felt like 10 years. And I remember looking at my dad and I said, I can't say it. I can't get the Baruch Hu. I couldn't get the word out. And
what had gone wrong suddenly? It's like very strange that, no?
Don't know. I don't know what it was. I just couldn't get the words out. Eventually, I managed to sort of blast it out, Baruch Hu. And once I was moving, it was fine. Baruch Hu Hashem, Baruch, so on, so on, so on. But then I lost my confidence completely. If it felt like the entire shul was watching you, even though they probably weren't. But at that point in time, 18 years old, so you're very self-conscious about everybody watching you, and I felt like the whole world was watching me, and that something quite traumatic, I guess, had happened at that point. And I went back to yeshiva, stopped davening from the Omid completely, just said no, laning, no, call-ups. Being a Levi, disaster for a stutterer. Oh, especially when you're suffering with it. What a disaster. Kohen, good luck to them, because they're probably having one once a week. But a Levi, you're going to be frequently called up. And specifically it was that thing that sort of triggered it off really, really badly.
Did anybody ask you like what happened while you were back in Manchester? Because you were so confident before you left, and somehow you came back and everything sort of like had imploded.
Yeah, so the Rosh Yeshiva, the head of the yeshiva at the time, spoke to me, and I explained to him what had happened, and that that was it. Didn't want to do any sort of thing public speaking, or doing that sort of stuff. Wasn't interested anymore. Was sort of scared. Lost my confidence completely with it. And I used to walk out of, I didn't tell a lot of my friends at the time, and what I used to do was when it got to laning, I used to walk out. Or if, wait until Levi had probably been, and then and then come back, and then know that I can't get called up. Sometimes they might be looking around. I think after a while, I probably spoke to the gabbai. Gosh, I have to keep saying that word. It's terrible. Warden. I should say warden. It's easy because I do have a tendency to substitute certain words, actually. So saying hard guz, I do find very, very hard. I probably spoke to him at the time. And, I had some very, very good friends there who were very, very understanding. It got to the point where I lost confidence completely. Using the phone, wouldn't use the phone. And if I needed a phone call to be made, I used to get my friends to help me out if I was at home. My brother, I used to ask him, even though he has a stutter too, probably not quite as bad as me, but I think that, his sort of confidence levels at the time were much, much higher. My dad, whoever it was, I tried to use the phone as least as I possibly could, especially if it was to talk to someone that I didn't know.
So when your parents called you in Israel, you just wouldn't take the calls?
No. So my parents were fine because they obviously knew that I had a stammer or a stutter from a young age. I told them, you know, my dad could see what happened in school, and I think I told my mum. I'm pretty certain that I told her at that time. So, you know, that was a comfortable situation. And when you sort of stammer and stutter, or when you're going into situations where you're not so comfortable, really, and especially doing anything within school was an extremely uncomfortable situation for me, because I guess that's where things started to trigger off again. And then it just sort of expanded from just being shul to being everything. Any sort of public speaking, using the phone, especially using the phone, because in my head, they can't even see my face. So if I stutter at that point, they're just talking to a silent phone. You know, what's this guy? What is wrong with this guy?
And so at that point, you're in your, am I right in saying you're in your early 20s at that point, or late teens? Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that I was 18, because I went to, so I was 17 when I went to yeshiva. Yeah, I was probably about 18, 19, 20. I stayed in yeshiva for 3 years. I was probably going to do a second year. I had a university place which I actually cancelled, or I deferred for 1 year to do a second year. But then I did a third year, and I know that I did that third year so that I wouldn't have to come home and face that.
It's I mean, it's such a time of life, you know, when you're sort of 18, 19 and you're moving through some very exciting times. You're away from home for probably the first time in your life. You're meeting new people and you're having new experiences every day. And this should be the sort of things that most teenagers look forward to. It is their, I mean, we all know the bar mitzvah's officially becoming an adult, but let's face it, it's only when you have to start making your own way in the world that you start to learn it. And I suppose 18, 19, around that sort of time, the time that most of us start to feel our way into adulthood and work out what it is we're going to be doing with our lives. And it's a bright, hopeful time for most people. And I'd imagine having this sort of sneak up on you almost by surprise, because it was something that you'd managed quite or forgotten about really until then, just leap out at you and really sort of halt your progress. So much so that you had to change your plans.
Yeah, totally, completely changed plans. I mean, I wasn't the most, Hebrew academic students that there was in school, suffice to say. And when I went to yeshiva, it was more of something that you did. Jewish grammar boy, you go to yeshiva, and I actually remember saying to my dad, "Just pay 1 month at a time. We'll see how things go here." And I really, really enjoyed my time there. Both the learning, Dad, don't worry, and also the fun. But I did enjoy my time there. But the plan was initially to come back after a year, go to university and carry on, with life back here.
What were you supposed to be studying?
I had a place in university to do psychology and counselling. That was back in 2005. That's when I had that place, and I ended up deferring it for a year, which, again, I think that I wanted to spend a second year there, but part of my decision making was certainly because I didn't want to come home. I don't want to go to university, and as you said, David, it's supposed to be a time where you want to meet new people, have new experiences, and it was something that I wanted to stay well away from. Meeting new people was horrible for me. One of the hardest things for me to do, and I still find extremely hard, is to say my own name. I find it very, very hard, and I don't know why. It could be because my name starts with a vowel. Vowels can be quite hard to say, just like with consonants, which are quite hard, like g, very, very hard. Cuz are very hard. I called my one son with a vowel and one son with a hard sounding consonant. Don't know what I was thinking, but there you go.
you like the challenge. So
I like the challenge.
So what happened next?
what happened next was that I had speech therapy in Israel. So it was actually the Rosh Hashiva at the time arranged that for me. I used to go to Hanoff once a week to go see a speech therapist, and it didn't work for me at that point. And again, this is in my opinion only, and only with my experience. I felt that I got to a certain age where speech therapy wouldn't work for me. That I got a number of times, and the different techniques that she was giving me, it wasn't helping me in a sort of psychological way to get past the sort of trauma or the it being stuck, because it wasn't that I was going it was that I just couldn't get the words out. Someone could phone, "What's your name?" And literally, it's like it just won't come. It just won't come.
It's so awful as a kid not to be able to say your own name. People must. Did you think that people thought you were like some kind of slow? I mean, I don't want to use any of the.
No.
But people must have thought you were like, you were special needs or something. Like, ask the guy what his name is, and he goes, I can't get his name out.
Yes, so that happened to me, and I remember I went to a wedding in London, and horrible, you're going to meet all new different people at weddings. Brilliant, this is great. And I was talking to a couple of friends, and then someone else comes along, and then they, my name's this, my name's that. I'm thinking, brilliant, fantastic. I'm going to have to introduce myself here. Right, so he introduces himself. Hi, my name's Josh, and you are... it's just
and Aaron, can I ask you another question? Yeah. When I'm presuming most of the pressure you talked about it as trauma. So most of that pressure and trauma of actually speaking, public speaking, if you like, is all predicated and based on the fact that people are forming an impression of you, and you're conscious about what they think about you. I'm presuming, therefore, if you were to shut the door and know that nobody's listening to you whatsoever, and it was literally just you on your own, you could say Aaron Lowe for as long as you wanted.
Oh, yes. Done it many times. And, when I started working at Reddish Vale, where I worked for 7 years, a high school, I had to go to a lot of meetings where you've got a lot of different professionals sat around the big conference tables sometimes. And, in these kinds of meetings, they always have to go around the room and introduce yourself. Now, this was at a point in time where G for Gemma was the perfect tonic. Yeah, G, not G. Gemma. Gemma would have been, Robert, brilliant. So... where was I? I can't remember what I was saying.
You had to go to
yourself a Reddish
with professionals.
Yes. So we had to go around, and even though at that point I was getting a lot better with the stutter, I still, a couple of days beforehand, I knew that I had a meeting, and I knew that they're going to come round to me, and I'm going to have to introduce myself. And I just sit at home. Aaron Lowe. How hard can it be? Aaron Lowe. And I don't understand. Why is it so hard to say? But then you get there, and the pressure's building. You feel that tightness that you feel when you get nervous, and you go, Now I go with different sorts of ways. And there were a couple of ways. There was to start off with something else. So a lot of people used to say their name immediately and say what their role was. I used to say, my name is Aaron Lowe. So I used to let it flow. My name is Aaron Lowe. My name is Aaron Lowe, which was easier than just starting with the harder sounds. Because I was working in a school and people knew you as Mr. Lowe. So often, and I knew that it probably sounded, why is this guy not saying his first name? But Mr. Lowe, easier to say. So I used to use different methods to sort of get around it. And, that's one of the things that I've sort of done over time.
We've got a great question here from somebody with an unpronounceable name on any day of the week, no matter who you are. Clive Mossbar. Here he is. Did you ever consider changing your first name to one that you can pronounce?
Never. No. I mean, sometimes I thought, but then do you know what, Clive? Actually, I did sometimes think, well, what would be an easier sounding name? What would be an easier sounding name? And the more names that I thought of, and I thought, would that be easy? You know, I don't know. David, no, hard, very, very, very hard ones. Josh, maybe Josh. You know, that's quite an easier. Josh, nice. But I didn't think too hard about it. You know, I liked my name. Mum and Dad would be happy to hear that. Do not worry. But no, it wasn't something. But yeah, I guess sometimes I was a bit like, oh, only if I had a name that was which was an easier sounding name. Yeah,
okay, and variations around the same question. Dr. Adam Sugar. Hi, Aaron. Did you find it hard to refer to somebody else called Aaron, or only when talking about yourself?
It probably was only when I'm talking about myself, because when I was talking about someone else, I never had to start with that word Aaron. Never really. It was very easy to start off with another word and then introduce Aaron into the sentence along the way. It was when somebody says, "What's your name?" as a direct question right then. It's like, bosh, you know, you weren't expecting it. What's your name? You know, and that's when it, you know, you get that block. I can't even describe it really. It's like someone's just like literally putting your hand over your mouth and you just can't get the word out. You're tongue tied. It's like your tongue's completely stuck. Yeah.
So for you, it was more. You knew it wasn't necessarily about the exercises in the speech therapy and sort of getting used to a rhythm or a pattern. It was more the psychological sort of the fact that it was so daunting to have to communicate with others, and for you to be self-conscious about the way that you spoke to them. Yes,
and I always felt like everybody was watching me, and because of that, I used to, when I had to do something, and it could be in a few days' time, I used to build up in my head, you know, how I'm going to get through that situation. It hasn't happened, and it could be that there was no problem with it. And I'll tell you an interesting thing. It was I can't remember whose Chevrobrockus that it was, but I used to always insist. I used to tell the person, "Don't give me a Chevrobrockus to say." So always say no, forget it. And we went to a Chevrobrockus at someone's house once, friends of my parents. I can't remember how. I must have been about 20. I must have been around that sort of age. And told the host, "Don't give me one." And he was sneaky. And he came to me right then. And he gave me one. And I said, "Absolutely fine." Now, maybe that's because I didn't have the whole build-up in my head. I wasn't, you know, worrying about it. Maybe. I don't know. But I used to always try and prepare not to have to do anything about it, so I wouldn't have that build-up. Yeah.
Did you find that a lot of this was almost like self-inflicted? It's sort of like you were beating yourself up as you were getting to something, so you were just like, you were psyching yourself up for failure almost.
Oh, yes, 100%. And I mean, I'll give you another example. You know, these are things that I haven't told many people. You know, before I met Gemma, I remember talking to Mr. Pink, my old head from school, and he said to me, "Marriage." That's what marriage, Aaron. And I said, "No, forget it." You know why? I said, because this stutter and having to say under the chuppah, Hariyat, Mukadeshes, etc., and then be stood in front of 300, 400 people, how many people that there are, and say it. No way. So yeah, I was really, you know, building up for things that were nowhere near yet. You know, I wasn't interested in, you know, to you know, date girls, because ultimately I knew what had to be done at the end of that process of dating girls. You're going to stand under the chuppah. You might be asked to do a speech. I never gave a speech at my wedding because I knew, even though I was doing a lot better, I knew that I wouldn't enjoy the day. I knew that.
And so Aaron was the solution to find a father-in-law that wouldn't let you get a word in edgeways anyway.
I know. So I thought, I can't get a word in. Perfect. Yeah, you've summed it up. That was the answer. That was the answer. Marry Robert Nathan's daughter.
So what is the rest of the story? Because obviously the Aaron Lowe that we're talking to today would not have been able to sit on this show 10 years ago and do this.
No,
so what's made the difference? What's happened in between?
So in between, I came back. I stopped seeing the speech therapist. I came back home, spent a while, just not really doing much. I worked, and I enjoyed the work that I did. But university, I put on hold completely. I didn't want to do anything that required too much communication. So yeah, I put it on hold for a while, and during that time,
you could have done an open university course, right? Would that didn't sort of like appeal to you?
I thought about it, and again, it's a lot of speaking to lecturers over the phone. So I always thought 10 steps ahead. What could problems be? And yes, so you're right. I was a victim of myself. I was beating myself up before something had actually happened. I was always thinking ahead. And sometimes I still do. To this day, sometimes I still do, but I deal with it a lot better. But my parents suggested maybe going to see a psychologist or a counsellor might help. And I thought, okay, I will. And I did. And it proved to be very, very successful. And I guess what he made me realize was not to care what other people think. And that actually a lot of people don't even realize that you have a stutter and it's just in your head. And yes, your brain might be rushing at 100 miles an hour when you get stuck and suddenly you have to think of another word to substitute it for. So I'll substitute the word remember a lot to the word recall because I find it easier to say that word. And I have learned very, very, very well to just, as I'm talking, even talking to you now, if I feel like, that word, I'll substitute it for something else. So, if I feel like I'm going to struggle with the words I'm talking to you, I'll say I'm speaking to you. So I very quickly in my own head change it, interchange.
Well, if you are worried about what people are thinking about you, you might want to know that there's some very lovely things being said about you. Lewis Harris, now I know why you never called me when you were in yeshiva. Amazing story. You're one of the most confident, funniest guys I know. So there you go.
There you go.
I didn't call him because I don't know why. It wasn't because of that. I'm joking. It was.
Clive asked a question, and that probably marries together with the work that you did with the therapist that you went to see. Whilst you were sort of dealing with this, did you ever sort of drill down to what it was about that particular day that triggered it, or?
No, and to be honest with you, I don't want to know. I don't want to know, and it's something that I never thought of because I always knew that I had a stammer, a stutter, and even though I dealt with it well, and I was confident in performing in a public setting. So it wasn't something new to me, but I guess the experience of it was new, of what happened to me in shul then. But it wasn't something that I ever thought, well, why didn't it happen there? Why didn't it ever happen in yeshiva? I don't know. Maybe it was, I don't know, maybe it was expectation when you come back from yeshiva, people are looking at you in a different way. I don't know, maybe. Who knows?
Did you ever get bullied as a kid for stammering, or not really? Or did your friends ever try to make fun of you? I'm sure in primary school that's the kind of things that kids would do because it's just at that age kids sometimes have a bit of a nastier streak to them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean I'm a big lad, so people didn't want to mess with me too much. Occasionally, I had some very, very good friends, people who, I didn't get really bullied at all. Occasionally there were that I would stutter on something and they go, oh, is it, and so you're like, oh, hilarious, right? So you do get that a bit, and it's the way that you react to them. And it's the same with any kinds of a bully. If you show them that you're not bothered, they'll stop because they want to get a reaction from you. And that's what I would say to anybody with a stutter who's watching this, anybody with children, is that kids need to know is that there will be kids who will, hear it and it's something different, and so they'll say something to you, say something to your child, oh, you can't say the word, and it's just about having the confidence to show them that you're not bothered, you're not into,
Knowing what you do today and the work that the Friendship Circle does in making people with differences feel part of the family, part of the community. Do you feel that in this day and age, growing up with a stammer or a stutter is probably less of a big deal than it would have been years ago, when it may have been seen as some sort of a deficiency, or somebody would have tried to sort of really try and iron it out of you, as they were very intolerant of these sort of differences, and if you had a stammer or a stutter, you were just assumed you just weren't mentally up to it. I mean, that's clearly obviously not the case. Are we sort of in the golden age of acceptance with these sort of things?
I think so, and I hope that we are. I still think that there's always improvement there. I think that there's still a lot of work to be done in raising awareness for people with learning or physical disabilities. And it's actually interesting. I find to say that word very hard, disabilities. And I work in the business of working with people with learning. So it was actually because when we did the Friendship Circle campaign, and me and my dad, we did a page together, and we did a little video of both of us talking about it, and we're raising money, and I made sure that it was his part that said that word, disability, because whenever I tried it, it just got stuck. So I made sure that he said it, but it doesn't bother me. Yeah.
We've got some big fans of yours that have written in, none more so than your, I think your little sister, if I'm not mistaken. When are you going to mention your annoying little sister making you sing at her wedding and never having trouble in singing in public after that?
You're the best, right?
And she goes on to say, I remember you and Shimon getting us all into stitches talking about your stammers, and it shows such confidence. This was more family. This is like a bar mitzvah. You've got all these people coming out. They're proud of you, man. They love you. I guess it's.
What was that story with the singing?
Singing is a lot easier. If you go back many years, I don't know whether you ever watched this, Pop Idol, and there was a chap on there who came second. I think it was the first year. I mean, what a name to have with a stutter, Gareth Gates.
Yeah.
I mean, at least my second name was okay to say, but this guy didn't stand a chance. But when he got on stage and sang, it was unbelievable. But when they went to talk to him after he sang, he couldn't say a word. So singing is just a lot easier. Why? Maybe it's the sound of it. It's the way that it flows nicely off the tongue.
It's one of the treatments that they give people. I think I did a bit of research into this, and I recall actually, you're probably Rabbi, you're too from, and Aaron, you're too young to remember this. So I'm just going to remember it on my own. But at some point in the 90s, there was a guy who reached #1. His name was Scatman John. Right. And the story of this guy was he had a stutter, and in the course of the therapy, had worked out how to kind of make it into a musical tool. So his scat was more like, it was a stutter, but it was more like rap, if you like, put to music. And it was a very kind of unique, it was one of these one-hit wonders. It came and it went very, very quickly. But from that, at the time, there was quite a lot of awareness around different therapies for people with stutter. And I think music and singing has always been one of those elements that, for some people, really releases them from the stutter. They're able to do it.
Absolutely. And joking about it, I mean, my sister said that me and my younger brother, we used to joke about it, because I guess it just releases that sort of tension when you're sharing an experience and you're talking about it, and there were certain words or letters that we both get stuck on, we can have a laugh about that, and there was one in particular during Kaddish towards the end, and you're up there, and my brother used to go, Yeheshme Rabbah, because he had to push it out, Rabbah. It was, I mean, I don't know whether this is funny for you, but it was just talking good, and I can hear exactly what he's saying. The King's Speech. I don't know whether anyone's seen the King's Speech.
Yeah.
Anybody who hasn't got a stutter, and I mean this, will not understand how well that Colin Firth acted in that film. I could feel that man's pain when he got up in Wembley Stadium and spoke. I mean, honestly, my heart went out to George. I can't even imagine. I mean, he acted
cried
so
during
well.
that film, right? Because I cried during that film.
My wife cried, probably.
She has a habit of crying.
I'm not really. I mean, when Mufasa was Nifter, I was upset.
It was a big moment.
But, it was a big moment. But
That was a sad moment.
The King's Speech. I suppose it was an emotional film for me because I could really feel the man's pain. I could really feel his pain.
And a lot of his pain and a lot of that film was spent dealing with the relationship between the king, obviously, and his therapist at the time. And there's a lot of sort of deep-rooted psychological facets to that whole story and the way that they handle it. And it's almost like combat initially. So, because he was obviously trying to, I think your belief that you cannot do it is so strong that you need somebody to sort of shake you and say, look, you're going to do this and we're going to find a way for you to do it. Yeah.
And it's interesting because part of the film, and what was the speech there? His name? Jeffrey Rush.
You've been out.
Did I?
I can confirm Aaron cried during the King's Speech all 145,726 times he's watched it.
Yeah. What? Ish.
Give
or take.
So you were just about to say, and I've interrupted you, and I know that's something that I shouldn't be doing anyway. But
that's fine.
Clive asked another question. What was the basis of your treatment? So
basis.
We were just talking about the fact that it's hard for somebody to come in and sort of say, we're going to sort of work on this and we're going to be able to get you to a better place. Were there any promises made by the psychologist or the counselor that you went to, or was it literally, let's just see where this goes?
No, there were no promises made. I mean, it started off that I was talking about different things that had happened, and I'm very keen that I don't want this to sound like a therapy session. What we're talking about now, that it's my experiences to share so that people can sort of, if anyone's got the same experience or got children with the same experience or know of anybody, they can sort of maybe relate that to them. But with the council, there were no promises made. We did a lot of talking, and when I guess that when I got annoyed with myself over something, his thing was why are you annoyed with yourself? I'm annoyed because people are watching me. Why do you care? And I guess that what he eventually helped me to see was that I can't be angry with myself. I need to get on with it, not be bothered. Yes, I'm going to have to live with this for the rest of my life. And accept that. I don't think that a stutter will ever fully go away, especially when you're suffering at that sort of age where you're very psychologically aware. At the age of 7 and 8, I'm sorry to all 7 and 8-year-olds, you're not necessarily so psychologically aware of everything, but at that age you're really aware. It was the realization eventually that I don't care, and it got to a point where instead of hiding it, people, somebody introduced themselves to me. I tried to say my name. I couldn't say my own name. And he said, "You've forgotten your name." And I said, "No, I have a stutter, so I'm just struggling to say it, but just, wait." And suddenly you're actually turning the tables because they're the ones who feel, ooh.
Yeah.
And I'm in control now of the situation. And, I'm very, very open. I just go around, "Hello, nice to introduce you, Aaron Lowe, stutter." "Hello, Aaron Lowe, stutter." But, I'm not afraid to tell people that. I'm not afraid to share that. People who mentioned to me when I was working in school that they have a stutter. Oh, interesting. And I'll talk to parents about that. I have a stutter as well. I understand what your child's going to be going through a lot of the time. So it's just the sort of accepting that this is who I am. I'm happy with it. And if somebody else isn't happy with it, then off you go.
Can we talk about somebody else for a second?
Yeah.
We mentioned her tonight, Gemma. So obviously we know about Gemma in her professional life is she's a tremendously sensitive, kind, caring, and supportive individual. That much we know. So don't spill any secrets on that. But I guess
you're right, David. You're right.
I've set you up for a fall. There was no right answer to that question. But if we were to sort of take that one step further, it was interesting that you recalled a conversation between you and our old headmaster, Mr. Pink, and I think he was sort of trying to push you into sort of getting married. I'm presuming that by the time you met Gemma, were you still struggling with this? Was she aware of it? How difficult was that?
Yeah, I was struggling. I mean, I was at a point where I was starting to get better with it. I was already in university at the time, and I was on placements at Redditchvale High School. I think I was. So I was already improving with it. I got to that point where I was ready to tackle it head on, and but yeah, I mean, Gemma was dropping loads of hints to me that come on, ask me out, and deep down I knew, but I was shying away from it. I didn't want to know. I was still of that mindset, or do I want to go down this route? I know what the end sort of game is. There were three things. Firstly, I might have to give a speech. Secondly, standing under the chuppah, and thirdly, my father-in-law would be Robert Nathan.
It's a Jewish marriage. Those three occasions are the last time you ever have to speak in your entire life. That's it. You're done after that. You won't.
Yeah, I know. But I wasn't. And then eventually, I plucked up the courage and I thought, right, come on then. And I asked her out, and the rest is history. But still, I didn't speak at my wedding. I still asked not to have the microphone when I said Harriet, because I didn't want to feel like I was on show. But as time has moved on, that was just over 8 years ago now. Wow. 8 years, right, Gemma? Yeah, 8 years. And I was best man at someone's wedding, and I didn't know that I was going to talk. I thought I might talk, I might not. And I never promised that I would, but I didn't want to build up in my head that I'm definitely going to have to speak. And I'm walking with this speech in my pocket. And I'm not very good at reading off script. I'm better at off the cuff, where I'm not having to think about. Otherwise, I'll be looking at this script, think, oh, there, perfect question. So I'm looking at this script and I'm thinking, right, that word I'm going to struggle with, that word I'm going to struggle with, that word. So it's in my head. So I knew that if I talk off the cuff, it would be fine. So I just drunk lots and lots of alcohol, got sloshed and off the cuff, and it was great. One of the best speeches ever.
It was all one word with no break.
It was all one word.
We've got some comments here that I'm going to cover. So obviously we are so proud of you from Denise. Now I'm presuming that might be your mum, right?
Yes,
it is. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. If your mum can't be proud of you, no one can. Conversely, we've got Dr. Adam Shogger, who always has to say how rubbish everything is. He's not.
Thank you, Uncle Adam. Uncle Adam, thank you.
And your mum comments that you actually had a wonderful class at Broughton Jewish that never mocked you. I think that helps as well, doesn't it? at that young age, where you've got if you've got an easygoing group of friends, because kids can be very cruel, even without knowing it sometimes.
Yeah, they can, and in school, yes, you can get. I did have a very, very nice class, brought some Jewish, high school as well. I was very, very lucky, very, 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 and as I say, never got really bullied. Occasionally, if I stammered on something, they might, repeat it, but.
I'm presuming the answer to this is yes, but have you since been back to your father's shul and done the bracha once again in that same place?
Yes. So I was actually talking to Rabbi Eisenberg about this a few months ago. I think
this is how the whole thing started. You were doing some of these. You were the mosque. You were doing the practice with the mosques, and then we came outside. We had like a half-hour conversation about this.
Yeah.
And I said to you, this would be such a great topic for Sunday Night Live, and you can see from all the comments that people are really enjoying it.
Yeah. So yes, I've been back to my dad's shul. I've been called up there, fine, and I came up with a little tactic that I use. I shared that tactic with the rabbi, so I actually got called up after we had that chat, and I thought he knows exactly what I'm doing here.
I heard it
because he said you actually noticed it.
I didn't notice it, but only because you told me. But it was very
only because I told you exactly. So,
well, look, there's nothing wrong with that. It's like we all have coping mechanisms. This is something you struggle with. This is your mechanism to cope with. It's not wrong. It's great. It's great that you found it.
Yeah. So I hum before I start. I'm there. The rabbi or the Baal Korah shows me the place, and I go Baruch Hu. So I hum my way, quietly hum. I go so everyone, what is this guy doing? But just quietly hum, and then I start, and it just lets me flow into it. It gives me that fluidity going into the word, which
Still lots of comments and questions coming in. You don't know how much we all admire you. Simon talks about it all the time. You're getting a lot of family love here, Aaron. My family never come on to tell me this. Robert, Nathan,
not that open, David.
Sorry?
You're not that open.
No, that's true. Aaron gave a flawless permission request to marry your daughter.
Yes. I went straight to him. I said, Robert, and he immediately said yes. I didn't even have to ask.
I was expecting
the word marry is probably not an easy word, about to guess. The M and the R are probably not easy words.
Oh, don't put that into my head. Marry. Maybe. Yeah, marry.
Oh, you won't have to ask that one again. Clive has asked this question: how is your Hebrew reading aloud now? But I guess you've already answered that in a roundabout way. You've got coping mechanisms to help you work with that when you have to. Yeah,
I've got coping mechanisms with it. I'll be honest, davening from the Omidin Shul and laning, even though I'm a bar mitzvah teacher, it's something that I don't really do. I did when I had a bar mitzvah February 2020, just before COVID, and they had the bar mitzvah in the Chabad house in Wales. And they asked me, would you lane, would you daven, do the whole thing? And I did. I was quite proud of myself after, to be honest, because that was the first time that I had to do that. But would I want to in shops? I don't know yet. Am I ready to go up there and?
Anytime you are, you let me know.
I'll let you know.
I'll get the choir to sing through it with you. It's like humming, just little less in tune. Shoshana is extremely proud of you. Talking of choirs, we have one of our choir masters with us this evening, Philip Morrison. Great talk this evening, just on the subject for the rabbi. What was said, Moshe Rabbeinu. So that's quite a it's a good reference, because it's probably one of the only times in the Bible where a speech impediment is made reference to.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's interesting. Rav Hirsch speaks about the speech impediment of Moshe Rabbeinu, and he says, the important thing about that speech impediment to realize is that it made Moshe Rabbeinu all the more, I guess, believable. Like in this case, Aaron as well, because if somebody is really, really charismatic and he's a great speaker, so you can say, you know what, this guy bamboozled the entire Jewish people into buying his idea or buying his whole story. And because he was such a charismatic speaker, he stood up and just really got everybody into it, and everybody went with the flow. But because everybody knew Moshe Rabbeinu was a horrible orator, he actually didn't know how to speak well. When he did speak, everyone, the fact that people bought into it anyway meant that, it gives the story a lot more credibility. And that's what Rav Hirsch writes. It actually adds to Moshe Rabbeinu's credibility in the fact that he's not this great orator. He's not just bamboozling everybody into believing what he says. Rather, he's not a great speaker, and, he knows he's got this. And it's interesting, just like you said, Aaron, Moshe Rabbeinu actually himself also almost, if you look at it in the Torah, he suffers from self-deprecating. He's looking at himself in a negative way, and he keeps on saying to God, God says, go speak to Pharaoh, and he says, I can't speak to Pharaoh, I got a speech impediment, and God says, go anyway. And he says, well, the guy's he's gonna listen, he's not gonna listen to anything I have to say to, because I can't talk straight. So you see, even Moshe Rabbeinu had, in his head, and here God has promised him. God says, listen, you go, I'll be with you. He's got God behind him, and still Moshe Rabbeinu is creating this impediment for himself. Not that this is something that was real, because once he got to Pharaoh, he probably spoke very convincingly. But before he gets to Pharaoh, he says, I can't do this. So it's very interesting how Phil makes reference to this in the idea that it's a lot about a psychological way of looking at it and your own mind, what your mind says to you. I think probably now that you look back, you probably realize that what you thought was such a big deal, most people, I would guess, probably don't really care. So what? So you can't say certain letters, flawlessly. For most people, it's probably, who cares? I would have thought that most people just get on with life. Oh, he's a nice guy. So what? So the G comes a little bit more difficult to him. It's like it becomes, I think, the more you live with it, the more you grow up from this pressure, the more it becomes like a non-conversation piece, almost.
Yeah, and I think that someone just wrote there that they never even realised that I had a stutter. And I've heard that from a lot of people when I mention that I have a stutter. Do you really? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And a lot of it's in my own head.
Do you like that when you hear that? Does it sort of give you a bit of a positive?
It does, yeah, because it shows that whatever's going on is mainly in my own head. Yes, there will be a few times when I do really, really struggle with it. I'll give you an example. Last week, I was at work and I was by myself in the office at the time. I think it was on a Friday. It was 2 weeks ago. I had to phone one of our members, and his name begins with a G, Gavin. Oh, and I spoke to one of his staff, and I was asking whether he wanted to come on the Friendship Circle Chester Zoo trip, and I knew that I had to say would Gavin, right? I couldn't say the name. So I just said, would the great man like to come on the Chester Zoo trip? And then I phoned up Esty afterwards and I said, it was unbelievable. I couldn't say. She said, just shout it then. I said, if I shout it, it's fine. But I thought, I'm not going to phone up and say, would Gavin like to come on the trip, please? Just sound ridiculous. And it's actually interesting because I just had a message from Gideon Leventhal. What a name. He actually says, my apologies for having an awful name for you. Gideon, it's hard. Guz are very, very hard. Yeah,
but it's so nice to sort of hear that you, because I'm presuming you're one of the more fortunate people, and there must be loads of people out there that struggle with this well into late adulthood, and it can. I feel bad using the word cripple them, but it can do in a way limit all their communication with the outside world. They lose confidence, they withdraw from life, they're not able to engage on the same level that they want to. And I think there must be loads of people out there that don't have the
absolutely
you have.
Absolutely, and many people are going to gain from. I mean, this is my experience. There's going to be lots of people that speech therapy works for them. A lot of children. I think that speech therapy will work wonders. It just depends on the individual. For me, speech therapy probably works very well when I went when I was 7 or 8 years old. But then when I got to 18, 19, 20, and what I would say more aware of what's going on, I would say, Adam, how you doing? I would say that it did become more of a psychological thing where I was beating myself up, always thinking 25 steps ahead or years ahead to marriage. You know, what I'm going to do when I get to this point. I'm not going to do all this because at the end, I'm going to have to do this. You know, building up to meetings, building up to this. It all became a very it was quite tiresome, actually, I would say. But it was then coming to the realization, and my honest advice for anybody who is a grown-up, at least, suffering with this, is to know that most people won't even realize that you have a stutter. A lot of it is just in your head, building something up in your own head to make you feel like everyone's watching you and everyone's judging you. And you need to realize that they're not. And most people are good, and they're not going to take the mick, and they're not going to mock you, and not to care what other people think. And by having that sort of mindset, firstly, it enables me to do things like this, teach bar mitzvah lessons. My job at the moment, and my previous job, a lot was communication over the phone. I mean, sometimes at work, I don't know whether my colleagues notice, I do sometimes, if I'm not feeling it, if I'm not feeling it and I have to make a call, I'll sometimes just leave the room so that I'm in a zone, just sort of by myself, and it's absolutely fine. But just that I don't have other people around me, because if you feel like everyone's watching. But it's about using different ways and strategies that work for you, that enable you to get on with your life like you want to live it. So that you're not going to be asking your brother and your dad and your friends to make phone calls for you for the rest of your life to Scottish Power, or I've got a problem with Scottish Power, and they phone and say they'll only talk to the person in charge of the account. You're like, oh, come on. So you don't want to get into that sort of in that sort of stage. It's just to have the confidence in yourself. No one's really bothered. Crack on with life.
What happens if somebody does start stuttering? Like if you're the person that doesn't have a stutter and you're talking to somebody that's stuttering and they're getting stuck with their words, what's the worst thing you can do and what's the best thing you can do for those people? Because sometimes people have a tendency to finish off sentences for people, and somebody said to me, no, that's the worst thing you can do for somebody who's stuttering.
Right. Yes.
When they start are you coming to, and they get stuck and you go, oh, am I coming to shul? Yeah, I'll come to shul with you. Does that sort of poke their confidence?
The worst thing. It's the worst thing, and to finish somebody's sentence. Oh, I used to hate it. Nothing. You're talking and they finish your sentence, and I mean, it's just as bad when they get your end of the sentence wrong. Even if they get it right, it's really annoying. Never finish someone's sentence. Just be patient. They're not making you wait for any reason. They're not just suddenly stopping talking for no reason at all. There's a reason. Just be patient. Let them finish. I have a lot of times in my current work now. We have members who have stammers, stutters. When in my previous job, we had kids who had the same thing. It's just about giving a bit more time, and sometimes it's just waiting an extra 3 seconds, literally 3 seconds, just to let them get the words out. And just by being patient, it allows that person to know people want me to communicate at my own pace. They're not rushing me. So yeah.
I think the point is because this is how I felt, when I've spoken to people that stutter, is it's not that I'm impatient. The thing is, you feel their pain and you want to get them out of the pain. So you just want to finish that sentence so that they don't have to go through the pain of finishing the sentence.
Yeah, of course.
I'm trying to be helpful. It's not like, oh God, there he goes again. He can't finish a sentence. Let me do it for him. It's more like, oh, he's struggling so much. Let me just try and get him out of that uncomfortable situation.
Of course.
Like, as a stammerer, you don't see it as such, do you?
Yeah. I mean, it's like when you've got kids, and sometimes they're waiting, and you're waiting for them to get whatever they want to say out, and you're like, oh, please, I know exactly what you want to say, but please let me finish the sentence for you. But they're going, like, yes, you just got to be patient, even with somebody who hasn't got, let a child finish what they want to say, because they may have a stammer, they may have a stutter too. So just be patient, let them say what they want to say, and they feel valued for it.
Well, do you find that your stammer helped you with your current job in a way that people now say, you know what, I know what it means to have a form, I guess, of disability. Obviously not as extreme as many of the people that you have in the friendship circle, but I know what it means to not be able to do everything. And so I can feel for those people much, much better. Well, there you go. That's the Laura Nathan asked exactly the same question. Yeah,
I guess so. Yeah, so I'll come back to Clive's questions in, because Clive popped up with something. But yeah, Laura and the rabbi. It did. I mean, when I was in primary school, I was in the same class as someone who's now a member of the friendship circle. He's very, very open that we were brought in Jewish buddies. So. And I was always very, 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 very friendly with him when I was in school, and just was able to connect with him that maybe other children couldn't connect in that way. Able to connect with kids in my class who had behavioural issues, maybe. When I finished in yeshiva, I worked with an autistic young man. So I guess sort of special needs, learning disabilities was always an area which I was very, very interested in, and something which I felt that I was a natural at. Do I think that having a stutter helped me in that career path? Maybe naturally it did. It might have allowed me to have empathy for people who have some sort of disability, because a stutter, is it considered to be one? I don't know. Maybe. A disability of speech. Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people feel very, very limited by what they can do, because they feel they can't express themselves. Whether that's true or not, it might only be in their head. But, like you said, if you're not willing to go out with a girl because you're worried that I'm going to have to marry her, and then I'm going to say Arev and Kadeshusli under the chuppah, and so therefore I'm not going to go out with a girl, that's very limiting, because you've now limited your ability to have a relationship with another human being based on a sentence you're going to say 2 years down the line.
Exactly.
Not to mention very presumptuous. It's only one day. A bit of pizza. And that's it. You're married?
I know. No, but, speaking seriously, though, even if that was the case, it was always, well, what if this is the end goal? Okay, it might not be with that one, but at some point, I'd like to think that this is the end goal. So whoever that, that was the worry. What was it that Clive asked before? There was something
let's go back to what Clive had asked. Just 1 second. Let's have a quick look. Clive had commented along the way that had no idea that you had a stutter. Clive asked about your Hebrew reading.
Right. It was the first question that just came up about not knowing, which is true. I mean, how many years have we known each other now, Clive? Well, at least since I started coming to Shubries from the age of 12. So minimum 22 years, and Clive never knew. So yeah, it just goes to show that it's all in my head. And not to worry what other people are thinking, because they're not thinking about that sort of stuff. They're busy thinking about their own lives. They're not worried about this guy's going to stutter.
Can I ask you also, just to sort of finish up, because we've been keeping everybody for over an hour now, which is good going, because they start to trail off if it's boring, but if they like you, they stay on the line. So I'm happy to say we've got everybody on board that started out the evening with us. But in your head, you've now, obviously this is the first time you've discussed this openly in public in front of the shul, if you like. This video will be available to everybody later on, and lots of people can read for it. And what I would say is that I'd like to thank you on behalf of all of us, because I think it's very inspiring, and there are lots of people that have difficulties, not just with speech, but it may be anything about communicating with other people. And as we start to sort of get into a more regular face-to-face contact with people, there are hesitancies, and there are things that people are going to need to develop coping mechanisms for and adapt to. And I think that your story this evening has taught a lot of people that, you know, you can do it, and that there is hope for everybody, really, and that story should inspire people. But now that you have told us about it, does that make coming to shul easier? Does that make standing up in front of people easier, that they know about it up front?
Oh, right. So there'll be right. Not easy to say, but I now know this. Let's see.
Yeah, well, that's it. You're not afraid of anybody finding you out. Everybody.
I suppose after I spoke to the rabbi a couple of months ago, and I then got called up in shul, and I'm stood next to him behind the screen, and I thought, he knows the tactics here, and I looked, he knows, but so no, I think that it's fine. I'm very happy for people to know. I think that it's important for people to know, because there are lots of people. It's not just me. I'm stuttering. I've never looked at the statistics for it, but I'm sure that one in quite a few people, maybe 1 in 10, I don't know, people suffer with this. It's not rare. And it's important for people to know that there are people with this, and just to be patient. People, anybody, not just with a stutter, anybody with any sort of, trying to think of the word without using the word that I don't like using, disability. Well, with disability, something that hinders them, something that prevents them from doing something. Impediment, that they should feel valued. And people just need to have the patience, and also that people shouldn't be bothered about it, because it did bother me for a long time. My life sort of went on hold for quite a while. So, you don't want that to happen. You don't want to have, that where you're walking out of shul every time that Levi starts to come along and you're walking out, so that you make sure that the guy doesn't call you up, and whenever you go to a simcha, you're asking the host, don't give me a Shavah bracha and all this stuff. You don't want that. So it's about knowing that no one else cares, and anybody who does, not interested.
They're not worth caring about, the people
Exactly.
that make fuss about these things.
When I heard that story 2 months ago when we sat together, I didn't think right away of Sunday Night Live, but I was so inspired by the story, because to have come from being someone that really struggled to be called up to the Torah, to teaching other boys how to do their piece and how to lane, I think it's just so remarkable. And that's part of the reason why, I called you up. I said, I thought you'd say no. I called you up. I said, would you be willing to share this story in public? And you'd be like, yeah, all right, And personally, I didn't think this was gonna, I didn't think the story was gonna. It took us a lot less than an hour and 15 minutes when we discussed it to get outside school. But but I think it's been such a an eye-opening conversation for so many people, and I hope that it's shown people that you can overcome your problems, and all you have to do is be willing to look the problem in the eye and say, you know what, I have an issue, but most people don't really care, and I can overcome it. And if I just look away from all the other people and the noise that's mainly in my head, I can really make a difference and become somebody totally different. And I think it's just such a wonderful story. And I'm so, we're really, really happy that you were willing to share it publicly with everybody else, because I just think that it's so inspirational for all of us to see somebody that has looked his problem in the eye and said, I've overcome it. And then, you know, it's really, really nice. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having.
Aaron, thank you. I imagine it was a little bit daunting to come on tonight and do it. So you show tremendous bravery through all of it, really, start to finish, and also just in general in dealing with everything. So thank you very much. I'm sure lots of people are at home are absolutely inspired by this, and we will see everybody again next week.
Yeah, hopefully next week. I spoke to David Fruman already, so I'm hoping that next week we'll be able to have a Holocaust survivor to join us in time for the 9 days, and then the week after is Tisha B'Av, so we won't be having Sunday Night Live. But hopefully next week we'll have somebody who's a Holocaust survivor to discuss their experiences, you know, to get us into the mood for the 9 days.
Okie doke. Right, everybody, have a great week. Thanks for tuning in.
Take care. See you.
Thank you.